And right now we are going to look at the most recent worker over at the Del Mar Strip, Imperative. Imperative last competed in the Breeders' Cup back in 2014, where he was well beaten in the Classic, but he seems to be having a vintage year this year at age 7 for Bob Hess, where he has won 2 races, including the Poseidon on the Pegasus undercard, as well as the Charlestown Classic. So he's made plenty of money this year. We have not seen him at the races since April of 2017, but Bob Hess can get him ready off the layoff, and he will be attempting to compete in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Here's a look at the Tabulator. Undefeated for Larry Ravelli. This horse won the Grade 3 Iroquois last time out. It's a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. It was his first time trying a route off a little bit of a freshening, and he sure looked good doing it. He's a 2-year-old son of Dialed In, as you can see. He seems to be absolutely handling his new surroundings very well. In fact, every time he's raced, it's been new surroundings. He broke his maiden on the synthetic at Arlington Park. He went to Prairie and won the Prairie Gold Juvenile, and then over to Churchill Downs for the Iroquois. Nice look here at the Tabulator for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Here's a look at Pavel right now galloping around Del Mar. Doug O'Neill's contingent for the Breeders' Cup, all here on the grounds already. Gabby Panchard aboard Pavel here, who we last saw finish third in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, but it was 1.25 miles, which is what he's going to be having to contend in the Breeders' Cup Classic. It was also versus older horses for the very first time. He won his maiden by 4 lengths at Santa Anita. He ran okay in the Jim Dandy, and then he absolutely crushed in the Grade 3 Smarty Jones at Parks. Another one of these horses that we're seeing that can just travel and take their game. I thought it was a really stellar effort for him to show up only getting beaten a length in that Jockey Club Gold Cup here, and it looks like he's traveling beautifully over the Del Mar surface right into the sunrise. Pavel will be competing in the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Classic. Thanks for joining us here on the Breeders' Cup Workout Show. We're a little light right now on workers, so we're just going to take a quick peek at the field that has been pre-entered for the Breeders' Cup Classic, which will anchor the two-day card here at Del Mar. We did just see Pavel out here galloping, and he looked to be feeling his oats as he was coming off the track. He was bucking and playing and really tugging his rider around, so excellent energy after a very brisk gallop. And you can see Pavel down there for Doug O'Neill. He'll be a 3-year-old lining up against older horses, although in the last couple of years we have seen a trend of 3-year-olds winning the Breeders' Cup Classic. Bob Baffert has won the last couple of years with Arrogate as a 3-year-old. Bayern was a 3-year-old. American Pharoah was a 3-year-old. So while previously it might have been a knock against for a 3-year-old against older horses, nowadays it seems to be more of the trend. A very competitive field lining up here, including Arrogate and Gunrunner. Those two met back in Dubai, where Gunrunner looked to be the winner at the top of the stretch, but Arrogate was able to pull it out. However, he has not fared so well since returning from Dubai, especially those couple of races right here over the Del Mar Strip that were just disappointing. But if you've been watching him work recently, you can see that he seems to be getting back into his pre-Dubai energy and work pattern. So it'll be very interesting to see what Arrogate lines up here. I thought one of the very interesting, I guess is a good word, horses that was entered was Churchill for Aidan O'Brien. It has been known that the Tabor's Coolmore team have wanted to win this race. They have come close on several occasions and just haven't been able to get it done. And Churchill here, I don't know if he has the best pedigree for the dirt, being by Galileo, although you have a Stormcat mare on the bottom. But we definitely know that they want to win, and they try and send out their best chance every time. Churchill's younger sister also entered in the Breeders' Cup. That is Clemmy. She has been one of the stars on the European turf this year. So again, that turf form coming through in that family. So we'll see how it translates to dirt. Mubtahij in here for Bob Baffert, one of several that he has entered in this race. And he was a very gritty winner of the Santa Anita Handicap. The Gold Cup last time out, where he was a win and you're in horse, got him his fees and berths paid into this Breeders' Cup Classic. So he definitely earned his spot in this field. Top to bottom, a very competitive field for the Breeders' Cup Classic. This is a look at Imperative, who did work here earlier. I thought an excellent work for Imperative. We did see him in the Breeders' Cup Classic back in 2014, but we haven't seen him in the Breeders' Cup since, and he opts to head to the Dirt Mile for Bob Hess and Luch Racing. Here's a look at the field that is going to be assembled for the Dirt Mile. As you can see, a lot of horses have first preference in other spots. Midnight Storm stands out here to me because they could have gone a multitude of ways with him, and they have been saying this is his last race. He will retire to stud after this, and he is a multiple graded stakes winner on the turf, and they really want to get that grade 1 here on dirt. So they are going to be trying Midnight Storm in the Dirt Mile. He likes to be on the front, and I think that he is going to have a lot of company here in this race. Again, 3-year-old showing up in the Dirt Mile. Battle of Midway for Jerry Hollendorfer, who settled for second in the Oklahoma Derby last time out. But he is a 6-length winner here at Del Mar in his only start over the Strip. This will be the first time the Breeders' Cup is held at Del Mar, and there's going to be a lot of differences in just the climate for these horses. We're talking early November, a lot of horses from the East Coast and from Europe in dealing with colder weather. Over here, it's been in the high 90s almost every single day. Plus, we have very cold mornings, and then we have the ocean right here. It all makes it for a very different atmosphere. So it always is what horse is going to come here and be able to flourish under these conditions. So I like it that a lot of these horses are here early enough to get several gallops over the track and really get that sea air into their lungs. Here's a look at Tabulator, who took a spin around Del Mar earlier today. undefeated for Tabulator, who won the Win and You're In Grade 3 Iroquois at Churchill Downs last time out. The likely favorite in the juvenile will be Bolt d'Oro for Mick Ruiz. He's also undefeated, and he was a 7-length winner in his last outing. That was the Grade 1 frontrunner at Santa Anita. That was his first try going a route, and it looked like from that race he could just run all day. He is a 2-time winner here at Del Mar as well. He broke his maiden at first asking, and then he came back to win the Del Mar Futurity. He was long odds that day, but he definitely won't be for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He is going to have to contend with some new faces, though. This is one of the most exciting things to me about Breeders' Cup is when we have the 2-year-olds from the East and the 2-year-olds from the West get to show down. Free Drop Billy might be one of the leading contenders from the East Coast. He was a dominating winner of the Grade 1 Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland last time out. That was his first try going a route as well. Before that race and since that race, he has just worked lights out, riddled through. His past performances are just bullet work. So not only is he fast, which means he can be tactical if he needs be, I feel like, even though his running lines don't show it, but he can go the distance, and that is absolutely what's key as we have these 2-year-olds, a lot of them stretching out for just the first or the second time. We also have Mendelssohn that was entered in this race, and he has a very familiar dam in here, Leslie's Lady. She was the dam of Beholder, who was a 3-time Breeders' Cup champion. So he has, I would say, a very big set of horseshoes to step up into. Makes me feel a little old when we have to go back and be like, I remember when, but it is very fun to see horses when you remember their dams or their brothers and their sisters that competed in the Breeders' Cup, and now you get to see them. Just a true testament to the longevity and the importance of the Breeders' Cup races in horse racing. Here's a nice look right now at Del Mar. The calm before the storm, we will call it, as Breeders' Cup Frenzy about to touch down here on Jimmy Durante Boulevard. Keep watching us here all the way through Sunday, 7 to 10 in the morning, where we can watch horses that are galloping and working here locally, preparing for the Breeders' Cup World Championships. Stay tuned with us here at the Breeders' Cup Workout Show. It is time for a quick break while the tractors pass through and renovate the racetrack, but we'll be back with more gallopers after they are done. Welcome back here to the workout show at breederscup.com. There's a look at the Amtrak. It's a fabulous way to get to the races. Drops you off right in Solana Beach, and then you can take the double-decker bus right to the racetrack. It's the perfect way to avoid having to park or having to leave parking. Let's take a look now at the field that will be lining up for the Breeders' Cup Distaff on Friday of Breeders' Cup weekend. Excellent field, including Stellar Wind for John Sadler. John's taken the less is more approach with Stellar Wind this year. She's only had 3 outs in 2017, but they have all been Grade 1 victories. She came off the bench winning the Grade 1 Apple Blossom. She came back to win the Beholder Mile and then the Clement Hirsch most recently right here at Del Mar. So she was one of those horses that was able to find excellent form where the surf meets the turf. Victor Espinosa will ride Stellar Wind as he has been ever since she came into the barn of John Sadler. Stellar Wind was 4th in last year's Breeders' Cup Distaff, and this will be her 3rd attempt at the race. The first time she ran in it was back in 2015 when the Breeders' Cup was at Keeneland, and in that year she was second, only beaten a neck. And we have to remember she was a 3-year-old versus older horses that year. She has definitely maintained that form, and it's excellent to see her lining up again for her 3rd consecutive Breeders' Cup Distaff. Abel Tasman, by alphabetical order here, will be the first horse in line. She is coming off a defeat last time out in the Cotillion, where It Tis Well was able to best her. She was very awkward at the break in the Cotillion, and then she was extremely rank throughout the race, so she seemed to have several difficult issues to try and get over. So the fact that she still ran a really good second there, I think, was impressive. And Bob Baffert and his team have obviously been working with Abel Tasman. She'll have to take on older horses here, and she is your Kentucky Oaks winner. It'll be very interesting to see how she's able to translate, hopefully, whatever was going on with her at Parks into a better form here. Champagne Room will be entered in the Distaff, and she is actually a Breeders' Cup champion already, as she took the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies in November of 2016. She looked excellent that day, winning it as well for Peter and since then, she went to the sidelines, came back with a 3rd place finish in the Las Virgenes at Santa Anita, but maybe going a mile might not be her strongest suit. I think she just wants a little bit more real estate, and she showed that that could have been the case as they shipped her out to the Remington Park Oaks, going a mile and a 16th. She took him gate to wire that day, and she was impressive. She won by 3, but really the way that she won the race was the most impressive I have seen. Here's a look at Blonde Bomber, who you would expect to be maybe chestnut or, hey, Palomino even. But no, she is going to be gray here. Stanley Ward trains this filly that has been entered in the Juvenile Fillies. I know several people want to come up and close and personal with Blonde Bomber. She seems to be a backside favorite here. She's broke her maiden 2 starts back, and it did take her 5 tries to get her maiden broken. But when she finally put it all together, she was impressive, winning by over 4 lengths. And then she came right back to win a stakes race. In fact, it was a stakes that was supposed to be run on the turf, and it got rained off onto the main track. It was going a route, a mile, but at Gulfstream Park, it is just a 1-turn mile there. But something has obviously clicked for this daughter of Fort Larned, because that 4.5 length maiden score backed up by the 7 length stake score means that this filly has realized, I know what my job is. There was a quick look right there as well at the field that has been pre-entered for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. They'll be going 1 mile and a 16th. Your probable favorite is Moonshine Memories, undefeated for Simon Callahan. She's a perfect 3 for 3, including 2 races here at Del Mar. She broke her maiden on debut and came back to win the Grade 1 Del Mar debutante, backing that up with the Grade 1 Chandelier as well. Again, here's a look at Blonde Bomber, daughter of Fort Larned. Also pre-entered in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, here is Princess Warrior. She was a winner on debut at Churchill, going 6 furlongs for Kenny McPeek. And then she ran a very good second in the Alcibiades. I say very good because she, was impressive. She was the favorite, but she was handled that day by Heavenly Love, who did get the win and you're in berth from Mark Casse. But she was clear of the third place finisher. So I definitely think that she ran well enough. It was her first time versus winners. It was her first time going a route. So while she wasn't able to win that day, I do think that she acquitted herself well. When you look at a horse like Heavenly Love, who had an extra race under her belt, and she had been really impressive in her maiden breaking score. I just feel like, for a horse only making their second start, she ran very, very well. She looks good jogging backwards here. As you can see, there's lots to look at in the infield at Del Mar. Not only do we have the big lakes in here, but currently there are sprinklers going on and they're rotating. There's also the beach for Breeders' Cup. They have an actual beach on the infield here with sand and chairs. There's lots of tents, so lots to look at here for a lot of these horses. Again, that's a nice little look at Princess Warrior for Kenny McPeek. Another look now at Blonde Bomber, who has maintained her position with the pony for almost the whole time she's been out there and is now going to venture off on her own. Juveniles always very good to watch when they can get out to a track that they haven't been to before and get a good look out. Obviously, only being 2, the majority of these have 2, 3 starts under their belt. Several of them have only run or been at one racetrack. So they've now come over here. They've shipped from wherever, East Coast, Europe, Southern California, just down the freeway, but it's all new. It's all new smells. It's all new things to see. And there's a lot going on right now as we are setting up for the Breeders' Cup World Championships. So take care to watch a lot of these 2-year-olds, especially on track here. Princess Warrior here getting over the ground beautifully for Kenny McPeek. If you're just new to watching horses that are going to be galloping or working, lots of things to look for. Look at the ears pricked here. That means she's looking forward and she's very focused on what her job is. When they're working, I like to see them flicking them around a little bit to show that they are paying attention to their rider as well. The ears are, they say the eyes are the window to the soul. To me, the ears are definitely the radar to the brain, so you can see where horses are looking, what they're thinking about, what they're paying attention to. This filly equipped with a very large shadow roll as well, so that is just to try and keep her head down a little bit and keep them from spooking at any shadows that might be on the ground. Princess Warrior just having a gallop here, but a very brisk one, well controlled, listening very, very well to her gallop boy right now. As Princess Warrior just finishing up there, here goes Blonde Bomber launching into her work. Again, pay attention to the ears. You can see right now as they're galloping into the sun, a lot of horses a little bit hesitant to really get rolling, but she is going to be able to pick it up here. Exercise rider keeping her well off the turn, so the filly stays nice and relaxed as she gets a gallop over the main track at Del Mar. Looks like Blonde Bomber wants to do a little bit more than her exercise rider is asking her for, but she responds well to the slight checking that she gave. Moving down the backside, she's moving in a very good clip here. I like to see a lot of these horses having big gallops out at Del Mar this week before Breeders' Cup. And that was the ear flicking I was alluding to. As we watched earlier, you can see the one ear flicking back, listening to her rider, the other one pointing forward in the direction that she's going. Stanley Gold does train Blonde Bomber here for Arundel Farms. Remember, one of their best racehorses was Wait a While. Very successful in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. And well-recognized silks as well, as you can see on the exercise rider's helmet, the green circle with the white tree. A little bit of difficulty there around the turn for Blonde Bomber, getting the gallop girl out of position. But she's maintaining her a little bit wide here, and it looks like they are back on track. A daughter here of Fort Larned out of an El Prado mare, so I can see why they tried to enter her on the grass last time out. And she's going to switch leads as asked. There she goes. Come down the straightaway here. Blonde Bomber lining up in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Much more relaxed now. Sometimes they just need to get out here and stretch their legs a little bit before they're able to take a deep breath and relax. And that's why it's so important to get these horses out here. And it's so much fun for us to all get to watch these horses. You can learn a lot from their habits in the mornings, just from paying attention to what they do, so you know in the afternoon if this is something that they're like or not. Thank you again for watching us here on BreedersCup.com, the Breeders' Cup Workout Show. We are live trackside at Del Mar, where the Breeders' Cup will head here for the very first time, November 3rd and 4th. We're taking a quick look now at the pre-entries for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, Grade 1 event, of course. They'll be going 1 mile on the turf course here at Del Mar. And right now on the track, a contender in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, and that is Catholic Boy, a 2-year-old son of More Than Ready, out of a Bernardini mare, Song of Bernadette. Jonathan Thomas is your conditioner here. This colt was an impressive debut winner at Gulfstream Park, 7.5 on the turf course there. Came from well off of it to be a 2-length winner. I feel like a horse that can win on the grass on debut, that comes from behind like that, is definitely a force to be reckoned with. It takes a lot of maturity and a lot of patience for a horse to win in that manner. He was well drawn that day to the outside, and I thought he looked really good. They ended up taking it to Saratoga, where he ran in the Grade 3 with anticipation. It'd be his first time going a round of ground, 1 mile and a 16th that day. And again, he came from off the pace, although this time he was drawn down in the 3 hole in a really big field of 11. So again, for him to be able to show the diversity that he did, I think was very good. He wasn't as impressive that day as he was breaking his maiden. He just kind of inched away at the end, but he did win by a length clear. And most impressively to me was finishing third in that race was Untamed Domain. And Untamed Domain has just since been an absolute force to be reckoned with for Graham Motion. After finishing third, he came on to win the Grade 2 Summer ultra guttily as he got the addition of blinkers up at Woodbine. So the fact that he was able to beat him so handily, and that horse had been impressive since, means that he shows a very good, strong running line. And that's Catholic Boy on our screen right now that we are talking about. For Jonathan Thomas, we'll be lining up in the Juvenile Turf. We'll see him hang out here with his pony for a bit, and hopefully he'll be turned loose for a solo gallop that we'll get to watch. Catholic Boy here on the gallop out, and as we watched him the whole time, you could see he was extremely aggressive to get away from the pony. The pony girl pretty much just dropping her lead strap there, like, you go right ahead. He was anxious to get into his gallop. He's moving very well here, and you can see the whole time he was keen. He would have absolutely done more for Jonathan Thomas, and this is my first view of him in the flesh, and it'll be a horse that I remember. This is a very strong forward gallop from Catholic Boy. Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile field here. Lots of very quick horses. Dirt Mile fills a really great niche in the Breeders' Cup that previously wasn't covered when we only had the sprint and then the classic at the 1.25 miles. So this Dirt Mile has really been a place that horses could jump in and show that they didn't have to be sprinters or classic distance horses to be extremely good. And this is one of those horses that's really going to benefit from having the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile as part of the lineup here. This is Sharp Azteca from the barn of Jorge Navarro. Sharp Azteca, only 14 starts under his belt, but he has won 7 of those, and 5 of his wins have been at the 1 mile distance. In fact, he has never finished off the board when running a mile, and that includes a trip to Dubai. He ran 3rd in this year's Godolphin Mile. He was only beaten a length, and when they came down to the wire, I'll tell you what, I was there, and I thought that this horse was maybe going to run lights out that day. He did. He ended up getting beat, but only a length when you ship all the way to Dubai and you run the way that he did. I thought he looked very impressive that night. He came back and ran a very good second to More Spirit in the Met Mile. He was beaten 6 lengths that day, but it's very hard for a horse to come back from Dubai and run well. We used to call it the Dubai bounce, although several horses this year have showed that maybe the trainers have figured out how to bring them back more successfully. After his second in the Met Mile, he did win the Monmouth Cup by 7 lengths, so I feel like that was a very good spot for Navarro to send him. A little bit of a confidence booster. They dropped him down to a grade 3. They wound up with a couple of easier horses for him to face, and that really did wonders for him, because then they were able to bring him back to Belmont, and he dominated in the Kelso, a grade 2 event. He won by 4 that day over horses like Divining Rod and Tom's Ready. So Sharp Azteca going to be one of the favorites, I feel like, in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, which will also show such horses like Midnight Storm, seeking that very elusive grade 1, and More Spirit for Bob Baffert, who did best Sharp Azteca a couple starts back. Del Romans and the Alba family will be well represented in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Not only do they have one of the favorites in Free Drop Billy, who won the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity last time out, they're also going to send out Hollywood Star. This horse settled for second in the Saratoga Special to Copper Bullet, and then he ran a very good second, only beaten 3/4 of a length to the Tabulator last time out, who we saw on track earlier today. That was his first try going a route of ground, and I like the fact that even though he was finishing second, he was still able to improve upon the second that he ran when sprinting, as they will go a route here. Here's a look at him getting a nice feel for the Del Mar main track. Here's Sharp Azteca getting into his gallop now. We just watched him jogging earlier for Jorge Navarro. Sharp Azteca coming off back-to-back scores in the Grade 3 Monmouth Cup and the Grade 2 Kelso. Both of those open length wins. He's relatively versatile, I would say. He can lay close to the pace or right on it, and I think that's going to be a key to the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, because we do end up with a lot of these horses that just maybe aren't fast enough to win the Breeders' Cup Sprint, but they are still quick. So they're going to be fast in here, and there's a lot of horses that like to be up near the front, and he's one of them. So it's really going to be a horse that can carve out the best trip. So a horse that can show a little bit of versatility, I think, is going to be very well suited to it. You can see this horse wants to do more as well, and his exercise rider really struggling there a little bit to keep him under wraps. And now that he's got a good firm hold, Sharp Azteca is telling him, okay, I'll listen to you. I'll listen to you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on the Breeders' Cup Workout Show at breederscup.com. You can join us every morning up until Sunday, or through Sunday, from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. as we catch all the workers and gallopers right here where the surf meets the turf at good old Del Mar, as Breeders' Cup will be heading here for the very first time in its 34-year history. We're taking a look right now at Hollywood Star from the barn of Dale Romans, one of a pair that Dale will send out in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He also has Free Drop Billy, who won the Grade 1 Claiborne Breeders' Futurity, a win in your in race last time out. If you're wondering where are those fancy Breeders' Cup saddle towels, Barnes will be getting them today, so hopefully starting tomorrow we'll be seeing these horses adorned in them. You can log on to breederscup.com where you're watching these gallops and works right now to see what saddlecloth towel and number each horse has for each division. They start from the 100s and go down to the 800s, and every division or every race has a different saddle towel color as well as a number, so you'll be able to coordinate if maybe you're not familiar with the Dale Romans having the black saddle pad with the white diamond and the R. You can know that, hey, when this horse comes out and he's number, I don't really know his number, but 304, that you'll know, hey, that's Hollywood Star. So you can follow your horses even easier than just having to listen to us or watch the graphics. Hollywood Star still here on his gallop, and I've just been told that he is going to be number 708. So if you're liking him and you want to keep watching him, that way you'll know exactly who to look for. Hollywood Star, a little bit green here on the track. We watched some of these horses that had excellent gallops, really focused into it. You can see he's kind of just loping along. He's going at a little bit slower pace than some of the other horses we've seen out here. His exercise rider has his stirrups a little bit longer. So to me, that means that he knows this horse can be a little naughty or a little playful, and he doesn't want to be dumped off of him. So he's going to keep those legs nice and long to give him a lot more stability. And you can see here, he's just easy, easy, easy. Rider looks very comfortable on him, though. It seems to be that these two know each other very well. And that's another key, too, to know, which exercise riders are with which horse, how long they've been with them. If you can see them, riding these horses in the mornings, these are animals that are quirky and they have their own likes and dislikes. So to keep the same person riding them keeps them happy in the morning, and that brings a better horse on race day. He changed his leads pretty nicely there at the top of the stretch as we watched him come down. So he looks to be getting a little bit more focused as they continue to move on. And really, it's just a beautiful mover now. Looks almost like a show horse cantering around out here. Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, going 5 furlongs here. This has been a very one of my favorite races, I'll say, actually. The last couple of years, it's changed in dynamic a little bit. When it's at Santa Anita, of course, it's run on the 6.5 down the hill. Here we have an excellent 5 furlong turf course to use at Del Mar, and it's all about speed. We have two excellent fillies in here, Lady Aurelia and Marcia. These two faced off in the Nunthorpe, and Marcia got the best of Lady Aurelia. She earned her berth in here. That was a win and you're in race, and it's going to be very cool to get to see them show down here again. Marcia has a lot longer list of races than Lady Aurelia. She's had 17 outs. She won that Nunthorpe, and then last time out, she ran second in the Prix de l'Abbé de Longchamp, which is also a Grade 1 event. And these girls just face boys all the time. So the fact that they're fillies in here, I don't think that you should hold anything against them. We have seen fillies win the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint on several occasions, including Misdirection. Lady Aurelia, she has always been something very special to Stone Street Stables and George Bolton. Wesley Ward says that she spoils him because of how good she just trains and she runs. She started off her career with 3 straight wins, including the Grade 2 Queen Mary and then the Grade 1 Darley Primornay. She ran third after that, and that was back in 2016. This year, she started off the year at Keeneland and ran her first time for the year in the U.S., and she was very impressive that day. She only won by 2.5, but she was pretty much just in a hand gallop that day. She looked sensational, and it set her up beautifully for the King's Stand, which she dominated. And she did beat Marcia that day very handily. She was the winner by 3, and then Profitable ran second. Marcia actually ran third that day. And in the Nunthorpe, if you go back and watch, it was over good ground, and Frankie Dettori and Lady Aurelia, when they hit the wire together, it was the smallest nostril hair that separated them, and Frankie thought he won. So when they hung up Marcia's number instead, I think he was one of the people that was shocked and surprised. So those two fillies, obviously very fast. They have a little bit of a rivalry going on. We also end up with horses like Mongolian Saturday, who won this race a couple years back when it was at Keeneland. Since then, I feel like he maybe hasn't been as fantastic at what he's doing, but he's also had a lot of races at 5.5 furlongs, and I truly feel like he is a 5 furlong distance specialist. He settled for third last time out in the Woodford at Keeneland to Buchero, who is going to also run in this race. And then prior to that, he ran the Turf Monster, and that was one of those 5 furlong events. Again, while he doesn't always win them, he is always right there. So I think the 5 furlong distance is really going to help Mongolian Saturday, who is actually on track right now here at Del Mar. He's something of a globetrotter, and I loved to watch his connections. They come out in their full Mongolian regalia. When he won the Breeders' Cup, it was such a massive celebration. They have taken this horse to Hong Kong. They have taken him to Royal Ascot. They have taken him to Newmarket. So I love to see a horse that they have taken all these chances with to take him across the world and try and run him in these turf sprint races. He's had 44 starts under his belt. He's a 7-year-old here, and he is still competing in the upper echelons of racing. So you have to give a lot of credit to all of his connections, and especially the horse here. A son of any given Saturday with 8 lifetime wins, $1.2 million there in earnings as he jogs backwards right now over the Breeders' Cup main track. Of course, he'll be competing in the turf sprint. 5 furlongs here on the turf course. We're taking a live look at Mongolian Saturday, who will line up in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, a race that he has won previously when it was held over at Keeneland. And this is a really good example of an older horse just handling his surroundings. We talked a little bit as we watched the juveniles about how they are at a new place, and a lot of them with only a few races under their belts, and you could see they were looking around. They had their ears flicking every which way. They were a little hesitant to run into the sun or to, go by the sprinklers. And you can see Mongolian Saturday here. He has traveled the world. He has plenty of starts under his belt. He knows his job. He knows his game. And really on a big day, when we talk about things like Breeders' Cup, where there's going to be 40,000 people here, it is very important because a horse can definitely lose the race before the race if they are too nervous about what might be going on or what else is happening at the racetrack. You saw Mongolian Saturday right now as he jogged along the fence. Horses at Del Mar right now are sharing the premises with a spook show and a haunted house and lots of Halloween goings on, as well as all the construction building the tents and the marquees for Breeders' Cup. So there's a lot of external stuff for them to see, and you could just see he walked right by all of that or jogged by all of that, didn't turn a hair, no big deal to him. And that is something that you see from these campaigning horses that are used to this, that are used to going different places. And on game day, that could be one of the difference makers for a lot of these animals. So especially the horses that are here right now. The track at Del Mar only opened on Monday for training, which is why we're a little light here. Several horses haven't shipped in yet. Some are still up at Santa Anita. We have plane loads arriving Wednesday and Thursday here from the East Coast. But these several horses that got in here as soon as the doors open on Monday are really going to benefit from getting acclimated, not only to the weather and the humidity, but also just to all the goings on. And as easy as he was to jog, the minute this horse turns around, you saw his gallop boy had tightened his saddle up and made sure it was good. This horse seems to be an animal that truly is enjoying his job, and he is happy to be out here training for a repeat effort in the Breeders' Cup. Thank you for joining us here on BreedersCup.com for the Breeders' Cup workout shows. We are live here at Del Mar. Here's a look at the turf sprint, horses that have been pre-entered to go 5 furlongs on the turf course here. We just watched a hardy gallop from Mongolian Saturday, and right now on the track, B Squared. You won't see his name right there in the pre-entries because he is on the also eligibles list, but he is here on hand. He was a winner of the Cal Flag last time out. That was going 6.5 furlongs at Santa Anita on the downhill. In fact, B Squared has never been the flat 5 furlongs. That was a race, the Cal Flag against Calbreds, and he looked decent winning it. It's not an easy race to win, and we see a lot of times horses that like the downhill love the downhill, and he had actually never been on it before, so showing that he can cut back successfully and also transition from dirt to turf. He hadn't run on the grass since May of this year, where he was well beaten in the Snow Chief. A horse that he beat, though, in the Cal Flag was Richard's Boy, and Richard's Boy is wicked quick, and he has also been entered here in the turf sprint. For a really good horse, it's been a while since he's actually been victorious. The last time he found the winner's circle, Richard's Boy, was back at Pimlico when he finished first in the turf sprint on the Preakness undercard. So the fact that he handled a horse that is in the field means that should he be able to draw in, he could absolutely be a contender here. And again, there's a look at B Squared, Doug O'Neill, Redham Racing, Gabby Blanchard aboard. Can I just say thank you to all the trainers for sending out these horses for their morning gallops here, kind of in race togetherness. We have several horses from the turf sprint. Earlier we had a couple juveniles. Makes it very nice to not have to hop around too much. Thank you, trainers, for being aware of that. Welcome back here to the BreedersCup.com workout show. Everyone that's been following along on Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, and of course right here on the website, thank you so much. And we've had a couple people asking questions, so if I can get to any of them, I will definitely do my best. A couple people wanting to know Do I prefer Arrogate or Enable? I mean, that's kind of like comparing apples to oranges, really, because one of them is a classic dirt horse in Arrogate, and Enable, obviously, a middle distance turf horse. So I don't know if you can really compare them. I feel like anytime you have a filly who is just as sensational as Enable has been, you know, you just have to like them. How do you not? She's won 6 races this year, including the Arc de Triomphe. It would be awesome to get to see her in person. But it's just hard to compare two horses that are so different. So can I not answer that question and just say I respect both of them? um, let's see. Daniel wants to know, how has Bolt Dioro been working? I don't think he's been working bad at all. He has good energy going into his works. I feel like I would like to see a little bit more energy on the finish out and the gallop out, but that could definitely be by design. Not as much so just by, you know, lack of energy. It could just be the way Mick Ruiz wants him to work, because obviously he is going to have to run routes here, as we're looking right now at the quick field for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, where I anticipate that Bolt Dioro will be the favorite. Mick Ruiz jumped into the game just a couple of years ago and has now taken out his trainer's license and is doing very well. He had quite a few winners down here at Del Mar, and he really opened up the Santa Anita meet on an absolute tear. I think he won 3 races, a natural hat trick, in fact, opening day at Santa Anita. So he is really gearing these horses up for the fall. And I'm sure saddling a horse like Bolt Dioro, who is owned by him, trained by him, they broke this horse on their Montana farm. It would just be a really great culmination to the time and the money that they have recently poured into racehorses to win something like the Breeders' Cup. Here's a look at the turf course where we will run the Turf Mile on Saturday. If anyone knows me, you know this is always my personal favorite Breeders' Cup race. We have had so many amazing horses win this race. Wise Dan, Goldakova, two that instantly jumped to mind. Kip DeVille, Court Vision, other big favorites of mine. Here's a look at the extremely full field of entries for the Breeders' Cup Mile. You'll see a lot of these horses have first preference in other races, including Churchill, Decorated Knight, Roly Poly, Senga. So what happens is all these horses can enter or pre-enter. On Monday will be actual entries for the Breeders' Cup races. And at that time, the horses need to declare which race they are going to run in. Now, you do have the option if the races that you want to run in are on 2 different days. So say a horse wants to pre-enter the Dirt Mile as well as the Breeders' Cup Classic. They can do that as long as it does not exclude any horse from running in the field, and they are on 2 separate days. So you might see a couple of those, but for the most part, I think people really have it in their minds where they would like to be. And this race also has a large list of horses that were not selected into the field and will be placed on the also eligibles list. Balabali on here, Sudois, and World Approval are all horses that won Breeders' Cup win and you're in races this year to be selected into the field. And, you know, World Approval is a horse that you just have to love, right? He's a 5-year-old. He's a hard knocker. He comes from an amazing family. And for a while there, he was a good horse. And recently he has turned into a really, really good horse. He came off the bench this year at Tampa to win a Florida-bred restricted stake impressively. Then he went to Pimlico. He won the Grade 2 Dixie. The Manhattan over at Belmont, he ran in next, going 1.25 miles, and he was 5th that day. He was just flat. I don't know what his excuse was, but he was flat. He came back to Saratoga, and he won the 4-Star Dave, which is now deservingly a Grade 1 race, and then the Woodbine Mile last time out, where he just showed a tremendous turn of foot there. He shook clear. He gave a perfect stalking trip. It doesn't really seem to matter to him who rides him. I thought he looked sensational that day. Now, can he be beat? Sure. I think that even Sudois, who just outran Heart to Heart last time out in the Shadwell Turf Mile at Keeneland, could be a real force to be reckoned with here. He won his last race over in Ireland, but he was a horse that honestly I and a lot of people, judging by his off odds, kind of just dismissed in the Shadwell. And he came from pretty far back to win impressively. Even though he didn't win by a lot, the amount of ground that he gobbled up in the last couple of strides was just wow to me. I mean, I was screaming for Heart to Heart because he's another one of those that you just have to like because he is such a campaigner. 31 starts under his belt. He's a 6-year-old. He does his best running on the front. And so as Sudois is just gobbling him up, you had to go one way or the other. But I do think that it's going to be another very contentious field here. And if you like World Approval, which some people on social right now are talking about, he's got a great turn of foot, but other horses in here do. And Sudois is one of those horses with a nice turn of foot. Who would my pick be? Someone else wants to know in the Turf Mile. Ooh, because I've just been a Heart to Heart fan, I would love to see him win. I definitely wouldn't cheer against World Approval either one of those. I have a soft spot in my heart for warrior horses, so I would love to see one of those 2 horses win the mile this year. Again, big oversubscribed field for the mile. There's a look at it right there. Lots of fillies entered in this that have a preference in the filly and mare turf as well. Some other people sending in questions right now on social, including one asking, why is Arrogate training at Santa Anita instead of Del Mar when the race is at Del Mar? Well, I guess you can look at it 2 ways. He didn't obviously run as well here during the summer as they hoped, and he trained down here. So if he's happy training at Santa Anita, you just keep horses as happy as they can be for as long as you can, and hopefully that'll make the difference on race day. Some horses flourish down here with a little bit cooler climate. Something you can have at Del Mar that we don't really have at Santa Anita are these great outdoor pens. So some horses really like that. They enjoy this little mini vacation, and some horses don't, and maybe Arrogate was one of them. Bob Baffert obviously trained him to be the richest horse in training, and he's won lots of big races from his home base at Santa Anita. So if that's what he chooses to do and just let him be there as long as possible, I think it's an easy way to make a case for keeping him there. And he will be the defending champion in the Breeders' Cup Classic, to be run as the anchor race on the Saturday program here for Breeders' Cup. Bob Baffert sending out several horses in the Classic, as you can see right here on the right-hand side. Arrogate obviously leads the crew here, but, you know, there are some buzz horses, we'll call them, on the backside. One of them absolutely is going to be West Coast, who has really emerged as one of the top 3-year-olds in the nation. He has won his last 5 races, including the Pennsylvania Derby most recently, by 7 1/4 lengths. He also won the Travers, which Arrogate used as a stepping stone to victory last year. Most recently, we saw West Coast work in company with Opportunity, who is another Bob Baffert trainee who has not entered here, and it was a really impressive work to me. Opportunity is not any slouch. Sometimes you'll see some of these workhorses, and that's their job, to go get beat up on in the morning to have the, good horse have their confidence boosted. And Martine was on Opportunity, cut the corner, and Drayden was rolling on West Coast, and Hoppy really threw down the gauntlet at him. So it was impressive at the end. West Coast not only able to maintain his position, but as they crossed the wire, Drayden really went to work on the gallop out and got him in front of Opportunity. So you're looking for a 3-year-old to take on older, which we know Bob Baffert can do. West Coast might be the horse that you want to land on. Mubtahij, we hadn't seen him win a race in a long time. In fact, he hadn't won a race since Meydan in 2015, and he showed up in the Awesome again last time out to win when there was 4 horses, I would say 1/16 of a mile out. It could have been any of these that were going to win. Midnight Storm had been on the lead when the space was flying from the outside, and then here comes Drayden just weaseling in between horses and Mubtahij. So he's going to be an under-the-radar horse. I think he's a horse that's going to need to benefit, though, from another key trip like that. I don't know if his talent level is up to some of these, but it's not just about talent. It's about trip as well, especially when we're talking 1 1/4 here. Collected, we haven't seen since the Pacific Classic when he bested Arrogate, and Martin Garcia was aboard him that day. He'll be aboard him for the Breeders' Cup Classic. If Arrogate falters over the main track here at Del Mar again, it could be Collected to pick up the pieces. He's the horse that Bob Baffert said he really liked being down here. He liked the vacation atmosphere of Del Mar, and if West Coast isn't man enough for the big boys, if Mubtahij doesn't get the trip that he needs, and if Arrogate really just doesn't like Del Mar, it's going to be Collected that picks up the checks. Here's a look, our first look for the morning at the Breeders' Cup Turf pre-entries. They'll be going 1.5 miles for $4 million here. And excellent field lining up as usual. Always interested to see which one of the Euros is going to show up here. If you like to play on your iPhone, you have to head over to the App Store, by the way, and download the Breeders' Cup stickers. Not only do they have very fun, sayings and little dogs and champagne that pours, but the new update also has jockeys and horses, and you can actually even get a Highland Reel horse or a Ulysses horse. So they're very cool. Head over there and take a gander, download those. We talked a little bit about Highland Reel. He won the Breeders' Cup Turf last year, so a defending champion, and I would say his form has been pretty decent since that race. He ran second in the Hong Kong Vase after that. He was defeated in the Dubai Shima Classic, but, I think there's a chance that he just doesn't like the yielding turf. I think he likes to hear his hooves rattle, so I think firm turf is really a good spot for him. He's coming off a third-place finish in the Champion Stakes last time out, but again, soft going there for him, and I know that Aidan O'Brien has just been effusive about the way this horse runs when he gets to run on firmer turf. One of the maybe better local horses is definitely going to be Beach Patrol. While I was kind of a Beach Patrol hater always, he did look extremely impressive, winning the Arlington Million. He had been coming off a couple of, I thought, rough beats and just got the most beautiful dream trip under Joel Rosario in the Classic there. Deauville had been heavily favored that day, and he could only manage a third. If he wins one big race, you think, okay, well, that was maybe a one-off. But then Beach Patrol backed up that Arlington Million with a 5-length score in the Turf Classic Invitational at Belmont. That was going the 1.5 mile distance that he'll have to cover in the Breeders' Cup Turf. It was his first and only time he's run at the 1.5 miles, and this horse has just really been consistent since coming to Chad Brown's, and maybe at age 4 he's just kind of coming into himself as well. Those back-to-back Grade 1 wins definitely jump off the page. He's also a Breeders' Cup win, and you're in horse here, so he appears in the Breeders' Cup, all fees and berths paid. As you can see, several horses there that will not draw into the body of the field unless there's a scratch. These are our also eligibles. Frank Conversation, Mr. Rory, War Story, Oscar nominated, Smart Call, and Seventh Heaven. Bullard's Alley also pre-entered here in the Breeders' Cup Turf off that 10-length score in the Pattinson Canadian International. And if you didn't see that race, I highly recommend you go back and watch it. This horse had not won a race since the Grade 3 Louisville Handicap in May of 2016. It was something like 11 or 15 races in between that time that he just hadn't won. And all of a sudden he jumps up with this monster race. He definitely likes the 1.5 miles. It's not every horse that likes that route of ground, but he's had 10 outs, 2 wins, 2 seconds, and 2 thirds, including, of course, that Grade 1 score in the Canadian International. He earned that day the highest buyer on a turf horse in North America for the year, if I'm not mistaken. So really impressed with that effort. He's trained by Tim Gleishaw, who is just super excited to be coming here with not only Bullard's Alley, but also with Buchero. And, you like to see not only the big guys get their day in the sun, but some of these smaller trainers too, when they have a horse that competes at this level and they get to come enjoy the festivities and the prestige of the Breeders' Cup. I always really like to see that. It's in the post, pre-entered here for Jeff Mullins. He is an 0 for 8 horse at Del Mar on the turf course, according to the DRFPPs, but I think that he has run decent enough here to say he can be a contender. He ran second to Hunt 2 starts back during the summer in the Del Mar Handicap, and then he gutted out the John Henry Turf Classic. He's not a horse for the faint of heart, though. He always seems to need a trip. Tyler Bays knows him so well, and he is able to utilize him to the best of his abilities, but he really can make it close there at the wire. You think he's not going to get there, and then he just lunges and does. One thing you can say for It's in the Post, though, he's a perfect 2 for 2 at the 1.5 mile distance. Again, not every horse liking that distance. Here's a good look right now at the backside. The action a little quiet still as the track only opened on Monday for training here. So a limited amount of horses on the grounds, but we are going to have a big shipment arrive on Wednesday, a big shipment arrive on Thursday as well from the East Coast. So we'll be looking for a lot more action. You can join us here on breederscup.com every morning from 7 to 10 a.m. Until Monday. So we'll be here for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to catch all the workers as well as the horses that are galloping in preparation for the 34th edition of the Breeders' Cup. Here's a look right now at the Breeders' Cup Sprint pre-entered field. They'll be dashing 6 furlongs. And in this race, the defending champion, Dre Fong, will be lining up again to see if he can't notch his second consecutive Breeders' Cup. This horse, the only thing that he has done wrong is 2 starts back at the Bing Crosby right here at Del Mar. He ducked in at the gap and dropped Mike Smith. If I'm remembering correctly, he still was wicked fast in that race, sans rider. But he did come back in the forego, and he won that handily. He beat Awesome Slew, who is no slouch himself, by 4 lengths that day. Awesome Slew came back to win after that race. So he hasn't run since August, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. This horse has been able to win off the bench successfully previously. In fact, when he won the Breeders' Cup Sprint last year, his last appearance was in the King's Bishop. So we're looking at a really similar layoff and form line to what he did in 2016. We also remember, of course, he is trained by Bob Baffert, who was able to condition Midnight Loot to win back-to-back Breeders' Cup sprints, and one of those was off a year layoff. So I don't think that Baffert is any slouch getting him ready to go off the bench. And if you've been watching Dre Fong work, this horse is just sick. He is so fast. When you watch a normal horse work, you can count the posts and the poles that go by. When Dre Fong breaks off to work, they are a blur. You cannot even see how many posts he's just whizzing by. His little legs just go so fast. So visually, he is very impressive in the mornings, and he is able to duplicate that in the afternoons. Once he gets on track here, I do want to see them, though, take this horse from the gap where they gallop. I feel like maybe one of the reasons why he turned back was because they used to come on and they would just turn back there to backtrack the horse. So he just kind of got accustomed to doing that at that particular spot. So I'd like to see them bring him on and pass the gap, because they will be breaking from, back there on the racetrack. And once they've passed the gap, then if they want to stand him and turn him, they can. But we want to make sure that Dre Fong doesn't make that mistake again and turn back at the gap during the Breeders' Cup. Mind Your Biscuits, one of my favorite horses in training here. He's currently on the grounds. He flew in on Tuesday. He did have his first jog this morning before we came up here on the racetrack for Chad Summers. And this is a horse, he ran 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Sprint last year to Dre Fong and Masochistic. He did come back after that to win the Grade 1 Malibu at Santa Anita. And he took his game on the road. He is the winner of this year's Dubai Golden Shaheen. So he took home about $2 million, or his share of $2 million worth for that 3-length score. And there was no Dubai bounce for him. He was able to come back to the U.S. and win the Belmont Sprint Championship in his next out. Then most recently he ran in the Forgo, where he was defeated by Dre Fong, but it wasn't even a close effort. He was 6th that day. He was just empty in the stretch. He looked like he was really struggling over the track. Since then, Chad Summers has said that his last couple of works have been really good. He didn't love his last work, the most recent work that he had before putting him on the plane here. So we're going to see Mind Your Biscuits have a little bit of a leg stretcher right here over the Del Mar main track, a couple days out from the race, possibly Monday or Tuesday. He did something similar in Dubai, and obviously that worked out for him well that day. I did go back and see Mind Your Biscuits yesterday at the barn, and he looked in good flesh for having just gotten off the plane. A couple of these East Coast horses coming in with a little bit of long hair, but it's going to get cooler here, so I think that they're all going to be just fine. I was noticing yesterday a couple of them as I walked by. They're kind of in that in-between stage. Do we clip? Do we not clip? Coming from somewhere colder to somewhere that's been hot. But I think that it's all going to work out as we look at the forecast here for Breeders' Cup week, and the temperature is going to be just about the high 60s, low 70s, really perfect to go racing. I'll tell you a horse that could maybe upset the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and that's Roy H for Peter Miller. He was an impressive winner of the Santa Anita Sprint Championship last time out. He settled for second to Ransom the Moon right here in the Bing Crosby. But I feel like this horse is just wicked fast. He's had 4 wins on the year and only that one runner-up effort. And while it was at Del Mar, I do feel like he was hindered that day. He got fanned 6 wide with Dre Fong in there. So I feel like with a clean trip, he would have been the winner that day. So he could be a horse right here that is maybe not going to be one of the top 2 that you're looking at that could really come through and throw down. Peter Miller, not one to be dismissed when we're talking big race days. Here's a look right now at the pre-entries for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. We talked about this race a little bit earlier, but Lady Aurelia going to be coming up on our screen very shortly here as she has made her way out here to the West Coast with the Wesley Ward contingent, including Hemp Hemp Hooray and Ultima D. But Lady Aurelia definitely on the forefront of his barn charts. Lady Aurelia was an impressive debut winner last year at Keeneland. She won by 7, and instantly they said, let's head to Europe with Lady Aurelia. She went on to win the Grade 2 Queen Mary by 7, and then she took on the boys in the Darley Prix She was victorious there by 3/4 of a length, stretching out that day to 6 furlongs. She then tried 6 furlongs again against the Fillies and had to settle for 3rd that day, but very good horses beating her, Brave Anna and Roly Poly. She came back to the U.S. to prepare again for her 2017 campaign. She started off the year in the Giants Causeway, winning that race by 2 lengths, pretty much just in a gallop. It was just a paid workout for Lady Aurelia that day. And even so, the horses that finished 2nd and 3rd behind her were able to all come back and win. So while it made it look like that she just overmatched her rivals, they were good horses in their own right and were able to come back, giving her a pretty good form line for that race. She headed back to Europe and dominated in the Grade 1 King Stand there. That was against boys. It was against older horses, but is back to her 5 furlong specialist distance here. And she was just breathtaking that day. And then most recently, her start in the Coolmore Nunthorpe Stakes, settling for defeat behind Marcia, who will also enter here against her. There's just really no knocks against her. That was the smallest margin that wasn't a dead heat that I think I've seen in racing this year. So while on paper it wasn't a win, she ran a winning race in the Nunthorpe. She has been training just sensationally for Wesley Ward. He has put her through her paces at Keeneland on the turf course. And you can see these nice, good works in a minute flat, which for any normal horse would be good, but then you take into consideration the fact that the dogs are up. If you don't know, the dogs are the cones that they set on the turf course, keeping the horses from working on the inside of it where they do the majority of the races to keep the turf course there a little bit fresher. So they set these cones up, so all horses that are on the grass have to gallop or work on the outside of those cones, utilizing the part of the turf course that isn't normally used during races. So you would expect, because that means that they are traveling over more ground, that it would be a little bit slower work. So when you see a minute flat there around the dogs, that is a very, very impressive work. And I think it's funny just that Wesley has said, she's been spoiling him. Wesley Ward has trained so many good horses and ridden so many good horses as a former champion jockey, that to have a horse that, just exudes this kind of class and talent that it leaves him a little bit speechless when you talk about her sometimes means that this is an excellent animal. And here's our first look right now at Lady Aurelia. She was a champion in Europe last year, and she is named for one of her co-owners, George Bolton's moms. Nice long look here at Lady Aurelia as she is taking in her surroundings. Blake Heap joining her there. He's a longtime assistant to Wesley Ward, also trains on his own out here in Southern California. But standing is something we see a lot of, especially European horses do. They come out, they back them up a little bit, and then just let them stand, take everything in. It really helps a horse be patient and not rush through their workouts. I feel like it does help them in the afternoon, and you like to see a horse that can stand here for an extended period of time. I remember, when back in the good old days when there was a lot of Bobby Frankel horses and even Biancone horses, they come out and they'd stand in their sets. Aidan O'Brien, once he gets here, he'll stand his 18 horses all together for several minutes before they all go off into a canter. So it's something that is a part of training and really is a useful tool to get the horse's mindset in the right place once they come on the track. It really helps them to start off so they kind of know what's about to happen. And you'll see a lot of horses stand after a work or a gallop also, just to be like, here, you're done, let's wait, and then you can go off, so you don't get horses rushing to leave or, just trying to go back. Lady Aurelia here joined by a pony. Of course, when they run in Europe, they don't have ponies, but she seems very comfortable with this one here and seems to be enjoying having the buddy by her. I'm sure she's well used to it from them being alongside of her as she prepared for a lot of these races stateside at Keeneland. Lady Aurelia moving out here with good energy, and we'll continue to track her as she goes out for a jog, and hopefully, there she goes, moving into a gallop now as she prepares for the turf sprint. I'm ready. So that was a look at Lady Aurelia as she prepared for the turf sprint. And now we switch to Imperial Hint, who has been entered in the Breeders' Cup sprint on the main track. Imperial Hint, a son of imperialism, brings in 5 consecutive open-length victories. Now, they do start at a little bit of a lower level than you would expect from a Breeders' Cup contender at the optional 25 non-winners of 2 at Parks back in December of last year. But after that race, he ran in the Fireplug Stakes race at Laurel and was a winner by 3. Then the Grade 3 General George, then the Smile Sprint Handicap, and most recently the Delavan Memorial, winning by 6 3/4 lengths, also at Parks. But, he has traveled around with his game. He has raced at Tampa, at Churchill, at Belmont, at Monmouth, at Parks, at Penn, at Laurel, and at Gulfstream Park. So again, when you see these horses that kind of bring their game all around, and for some reason we see it fairly often with sprinters, it does help them when they have to come to a new place and perform at the top of their game. You know, even though he's under the radar, his record does speak for itself. He's had 12 outs. He's been a winner 8 times. He's a perfect 4 for 4 in 2017, and really he's just been getting better. His 4 starts this year, with the exception of just the General George, which is his first try against Graded Stakes Company since way back in June of last year. Every race he's been winning by more and more. He has shown a little bit of versatility, winning gate to wire as well as just off the pace. And in the Smile, he was actually sitting 2 or 3 lengths back, so he's been able to come from a little bit farther off the pace as well. The General George, too, I can give him a little bit of an excuse in that race was a 7-furlong race, so maybe he doesn't want to go that far. So even though he was a dominating winner, he won by a little bit of less of a margin than he did winning, or running 6 furlongs. And when you look at his running lines, there are some good horses in here, including Stalwalking Dude, who does not show up in the Breeders' Cup, but has pretty much danced every major dance this year, including running very well in Dubai. So other horses that are globetrotters like Mind Your Biscuits and the very recently impressive Roy H. Whitmore. He's been on the scene pretty much all year, and he's one of the most consistent sprinters around the Midwest. He'll be coming here for Ron Marquette. And we didn't really say much about Takaful, whose last win in the Vosburg earned him a win and you're in starting berth here to the Breeders' Cup for Kieran McLaughlin. Here's our last view of the morning for the main track here at Del Mar, where the surf meets the turf and the new home of the Breeders' Cup to be run next week, November 3rd and 4th. 2 days of amazing racing, and we're going to be covering all that we can from live here on the grounds at Del Mar. Check us out at Breeders' Cup. Watching right now every morning from 7 a.m. till about this time or 10 a.m. And we will get all these horses galloping. We will get all the works. Hopefully we'll get to stop and talk to some people and get a little bit of insight as well as horses prepare for the 34th Breeders' Cup. Thanks for joining us. Look forward to seeing you here tomorrow.